Thanks very much, Alana. The next speaker is Emma Clancy. She won't be so well known to most of you because she spent the last 3 years working as press officer in Belfast for Sinn Féin. She's been given a sabbatical to come here to finish a law degree, and she's ordered back as soon as she's done. And we'd like to, without further ado, Emma Clancy. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Well, I want to thank Uncle Ben for the welcome to country and acknowledge that we're meeting here on Noongar land and pay my respects to the Noongar elders and the Noongar people. And we'd especially like to thank him for taking the time for coming out from the Noongar Tent Embassy at Matagara, Port Harrison Island. The Aboriginals of Australia are another people who have experienced the devastating effects of British colonialism, and there are people very much in struggle for equality, for self-determination and for land rights. And we as Irish Republicans want to offer our solidarity to you in that struggle. I'd also like to thank the CFMEU, who've provided us with a great deal of support, not only for this event today, but on many other occasions over the years. And the Union State Secretary Mick Buchan and the Assistant State Secretary Joe McDonald are here with us today. So thanks very much for coming along. And finally, I want to thank all of you, members of Perth's Irish community and our Australian supporters and friends, for coming out to this plaque unveiling. It's a good day for the Irish community in Perth to be able to unveil a plaque in Solidarity Park in memory of the Easter Rising. It means that as we approach the centenary of the Rising in 2016, we have a place in this city where we can gather together for commemoration events. And I think it's testament to the power and the resonance of the actions and the vision of the men and women of 1916 that 96 years later, we're gathering here today in Western Australia, halfway across the world, to remember them. In 1916, Dublin was the city that fought an empire. On Easter Monday, 1,200 men and women set out to bring an end to British rule in Ireland during the First World War. In their words, to strike a blow for freedom. The leaders, including the 7 signatories to the proclamation, were all executed by the British in the weeks that followed. And wearing our Easter lilies today to honour Ireland's war dead, we make no distinction between those who died in 1916 and those who died in 1981. We honour equally the Republicans who fell in the years of struggle from 1916 to 1923, and those who gave their lives in the recent conflict that broke out in 1969. The proclamation of 1916 continues to motivate and enthuse Irish Republicans who are struggling for reunification and for equality today. Its message of freedom and of cherishing all the children of the nation equally is as relevant today as it was then. But the Southern Irish state of today is not a place where the principles of the proclamation have been lived up to. Far from it. It is, on the contrary, a state in which a corrupt political elite has brought the economy to its knees in order to prop up and pay their equally corrupt allies in the Irish banking sector. It is not a state of equal opportunities for all citizens. It is instead a state of brown envelopes and golden circles. Before his execution in 1916, James Connolly predicted that there would be a carnival of reaction after partition, and so it unfolded. Partition created 2 reactionary states in Ireland, which the conservative political, church and business elites shaped to protect their self-interests. In Dublin, corruption replaced idealism, and the Mahon Tribunal report released last week confirms what we all already knew far too well, that corruption was endemic and systemic in the planning process in Dublin. Fianna Fáil is blamed, and rightly so, for much of what occurred, but it doesn't stand alone. The other establishment parties colluded by deed or by silence in all of this. And the result of this corruption and cronyism has been that the people of Ireland are facing an economic crisis of such magnitude that it dominates everybody's lives. It has meant that the Irish people were far more exposed than others to the impact of the global financial crisis. Ultimately, it meant that to prop up the corrupt banks, such as Anglo-Irish, the Fianna Fáil government accepted a bailout from the European Union and the IMF in 2010 that will burden the Irish people with massive public debt for generations to come. This debt was not the people's to pay. Fianna Fáil were wiped out in the Doyle election soon afterwards as a result of the massive anger among the Irish people at their actions. The EU and the IMF are now imposing austerity measures on the people of Ireland in the 26 counties through the terms of the bailout, with the agreement of the Fine Gael Labour government. And if there isn't a change of direction by this government towards stimulating the economy, a second bailout is inevitable. Hundreds of thousands of Irish people are now unemployed. Hundreds of thousands more are struggling to survive, and young people are flooding out of the country in scenes reminiscent of the 1950s and the 1980s. Many of them are arriving here in Australia. Earlier this year, the Fine Gael government minister Michael Noonan added insult to injury by suggesting that emigration from Ireland was a lifestyle choice. I'm sure some of the people here today would have something to say to Michael Noonan and others in the Irish government who make this claim. And I want to say as well, if you've recently arrived from Ireland, then Ciad Míle Fáilte, and you're sure to receive a lot of support from the local Irish community here in Perth, who are as warm and as welcoming as any you'll meet. We're also hearing reports of the exploitation of young Irish workers in Australia, who are in a vulnerable situation because they're dependent on their employer for their visa to be either maintained or renewed. So I want to say, if there are any people in this situation, regardless of what visa you're working on, you're entitled to receive the same wages and conditions as your Australian workmates. It's illegal for anyone to pay you less for any reason. And we would encourage every new arrival in Australia to make sure that your rights at work are protected. And the best way to do this is to join your union. The fact is that the Fine Gael Labour coalition government is happy to see emigration soar, because it acts as a pressure valve for them in a situation where they've failed utterly to introduce an effective job creation strategy. Now they want to entrench austerity policies in the Constitution in the EU Austerity Treaty. The Irish people will have the opportunity to vote on this austerity treaty in a referendum coming up in this May, and Sinn Féin is urging the people to vote no. In the north of Ireland, the British Tory party policy threatens to destroy the economy there through the imposition of savage cuts to public funding. The question for political leaders is what to do in such circumstances, and it boils down to political choices. They can either meekly accept the situation and punish ordinary citizens for the bankers' crisis, or they can stand with the people, resist austerity, and lead a fight back. And across Ireland, Sinn Féin is leading a political fight back. There is an alternative to the Irish government's disastrous approach. Sinn Féin's focuses on job creation, restructuring the debt, and stimulating the economy. And in the north, Sinn Féin has led the political resistance to Tory cuts and is campaigning strongly for fiscal powers and economic decision-making powers to be transferred from London to Ireland. As Republicans build their political strength, we also build our ability to advance our primary goal, which is Irish unity. There's work to be done to advance this goal by Republicans in Ireland, in Australia, and elsewhere. The sacrifices of those who suffered death or injury or imprisonment have ensured that the Orange State is gone, that there can never be a return to a one-party rule, to second-class citizenship, to British militarisation, and to institutionalised sectarianism. The progress of recent years has meant that the struggle for Irish freedom has entered a new phase where peaceful means provide the way forward. The Good Friday Agreement has levelled the political playing field, and unionism no longer has a veto over Irish unity. The Republican strategy is working. It's a roadmap for Irish unity. We're now in an entirely new situation, constitutionally and legislatively. Under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement, the British government has committed to legislate to end its jurisdiction over the north of Ireland if a majority of people in the north want it. So to achieve reunification, it will require the consent of the majority of people voting in referenda north and south. In that context, Republicans have a responsibility to reach out to unionists and others to engage with them about the nature, the form and the future of the political institutions in Ireland. We want a society and an economy run democratically in the interests of all of the people. A new agreed Ireland based on the people's rights is needed. This is best achieved by unity through a real process of national reconciliation. Republicans in Ireland believe that this means taking the lead on developing an inclusive reconciliation process in which all sections of society listen and engage unconditionally with each other on the basis of equality and mutual respect. Republicans need to reach out and create trust with Unionists. The wounds on both sides caused by the recent conflict need to be healed if we are to overcome the basic fracture of society in the North. And that is the message that Republicans will be hearing and have been hearing at Easter commemorations across Ireland this Easter weekend. There remains many outstanding justice and legacy issues in the North that need to be addressed. These include ongoing struggles over truth recovery and ensuring that there is transparency, accountability and a rights-based approach in all matters of policing and justice. Republicans in Ireland are engaged in political struggles around these issues every single day. We here in Australia can play our part in bringing pressure to bear on the British and Irish governments to fulfil their obligations under the Good Friday and other agreements. Irish Republicans in Australia have added to international pressure to defend the rights of Republican communities in the North in the past. During the 1981 hunger strike, the Irish diaspora mobilised around the world in support of the prisoners' rights, including here in Australia. Thousands marched through the streets of Australian cities. And after Bobby Sands died on hunger strike, ship workers in Wollongong refused to handle British ships coming through the port in protest. Support like this is very much appreciated from those in Ireland. And today, the mobilisation of the diaspora in support of Irish unity is a central part of Sinn Féin's strategy for reunification. 2 years ago, Sinn Féin launched the Uniting Ireland campaign, which is a broad national and international campaign to build political support around the world for Irish unity. Large and successful conferences have been held on this theme in the US, in Canada and Britain. And this year, this important campaign is being launched in Australia. And we urge all Republicans here in Australia to support it. In the lead up to the centenary events to commemorate the Easter Rising in 2016, we also urge Republicans in Australia and around the world to ensure a renewed focus is placed on Easter events in the coming years. Friends of Sinn Féin Australia is working together with others to initiate planning for nationally coordinated Easter commemorations across Australia in 2016. The launch of the Uniting Ireland campaign in Australia and the momentum that will gather in the lead up to 2016 provide an important opportunity for Republicans in Australia to play their part in the struggle for Irish unity. Republicans are about laying the foundations for a new republic in the 21st century, a real republic with social justice and equality at its core. Young people are increasingly getting involved in the struggle for a new republic. A conference of Sinn Féin Republican youth was held last month in Dublin under the theme, "This generation can deliver Irish unity." And I think that that is absolutely true. This generation can deliver Irish unity. Bobby Sands once said that everyone, Republican or otherwise, has their own particular role to play. Each of us can contribute to achieving the historic task set by the men and women of 1916, a united Ireland and a new republic. Ermiel Moegav.
Well, we're ready and everyone's got a good view. Please ask Alana and Emma to unveil this commemorative plaque for the men and women in 1916. Thank you.